Hello there. So I'm uploading this video after a while. I uploaded the part two, I think sometime back, quite a few days back. And yeah, I agree that there has been some delay. But I guess better late than never, right? So I'll continue with the story. And I feel like if I start giving a recap, it would take a lot of time. And as I have told before, I want to keep it short. So, yeah, do check out the other two videos on this topic and then come to this video. I promise the topic is very interesting and you'll learn a lot and you'll have a lot of fun. So, yes, let's get started. Just give me a sec. So, I was talking about the tea plantations and how it came about. So, a lot of the topic I discussed, I in the last part I discussed about the opium wars, and now I'll just directly jump into this part. So, tea plantations were coming up in the Assam and the Darjeeling region of the Indian subcontinent, and yeah, tea plantations were very necessary because plantation systems are mostly brought about when a particular crop or a particular plant is a very labor intensive thing to grow, and tea is such a plant. It is very labor intensive, and that is why plantation form of agriculture had to be adopted by the British officials and the British botanists and the British uh, yeah, officials, I mean. So, and they adopted this plantation system, and plantation system kind of tries to bring order to this mess, the jungle that was present in Assam. They brought it to order. They pared down the trees. The camellia is supposed to grow very long. It grows as long as a tree, but usually when we see camellia in TVs or in pictures, it's actually pretty short because they kind of control the camellia plant has to be brought to a control, and the size has to be very specific, and yeah, that's how camellia is grown. And in the plantation system, it so happens that the laborers had to be bought, and they are made to stay within the plantation for all the time. So they're not supposed to leave the plantation. So once somebody is hired to become a plantation worker, to become a tea plantation worker, they're supposed to stay in the plantations. They're supposed to get a house there. They're supposed to just shift their entire livelihood there. And it was impossible for them to leave the tea plantations. So back in the day, the tea plantations were like that. But you will be surprised to know that even today, a lot of these colonial practices are prevalent in a lot of tea plantations in Assam and Darjeeling. So these laborers are known as indentured laborers, or the system is known as the indentured slavery, because these poor people, these impoverished people from the regions of Jharkhand and Bihar and Chhattisgarh, basically the Chota Nagpur region of the Indian subcontinent. So the laborers were bought cheaply from these areas by the British officials through a lot of middlemen. So they were lured in the tea industry during the colonial times. They were told that British plantations were like tea plantations being set up in Assam and Darjeeling, and there are a lot of great job opportunities there, and that the laborers would get a house and they would get all the facilities. Their children would get a school, and they would get a salary and other benefits like that. But what they were not told is that they won't be able to leave the plantation ever. Like once you were bought, like once you agreed to become an indentured laborer, you were supposed to live in the plantation forever. You were not supposed to leave it. There were watchmen all around. They used to watch these farmers, and yeah, they just couldn't leave it, and they were supposed to live there. And the conditions in the tea plantations were very horrifying. It's like very it is not a very well documented topic, although there are a lot of good resources which you can follow if you do want to know about how the how exploitative Indian tea plantations still are. Then you would get to know how less we know of this topic. So these people who were hired were basically people from tribal communities, and they were brought back about 200, brought from Thoda Nagpur regions of Bihar and Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, and they were brought in these plantations. And till now, the successors of those people who were brought in these plantations were the British officials. They are still living there, and they still practice their own rituals and all of that, but they are still living in a very much similar condition, and it's a very pitiable condition. Do read Mulk Raj Anand's Two Leaves in a Bud, and there's also this novel known as Red Tea, and yeah, the name of the author has slipped from my mind, but I'll put that in the description. So, Red Tea and Two Leaves and a Bud. These two are very remarkable works, very remarkable novels which talk about the tea plantations and how horrific the conditions were in the tea plantations. So, yeah, the tea plantations were finally established in India, and in such a dire situation was created for so many people who were employed in this industry, and all of this was done so that back in the Britain people could have a tasty or a decent cup of tea. So yeah, this was one very important topic. I want to cover this in much more detail because this tea plantation aspect and from the Indian perspective, this requires a whole another video. I might go into it in more detail in some other video, but for now, I think this would be enough because I want to give an overview right now. So yeah, this was all about the Indian tea plantations, and now I want to discuss something very interesting. I want to discuss this dichotomy between an English housewife and an Indian woman tea laborer working on the tea plantation. So there's a very interesting dichotomy that comes across uh, through this commodity, which is tea. So, as I told in one of the earlier videos, that the women were supposed to preside over the tea tables and they were the queens of the tea table and they represented empire, like how tea became symbolic of empire and its proceeds and how the profits were brought to the people and how women presided over this ritual and strengthened the ideals of domesticity and British femininity. And yeah, she was treated as the queen and she presided over this. And so on, this is one side of the colonial divide. However, on the other side of the colonial divide, you will find this tribal woman who was employed under a very horrific condition in the tea plantations, and she was forced to work. So when you read those works which I mentioned, and if you in general Google about the condition of Indian tea laborers, you will read a lot of horrific stories about women laborers, because women laborers were chiefly uh, targeted and they were very much exploited. There were a lot of cases of rapes and exploitation by the hands of British officials, and even now the women laborers are in a very bad and pitiable condition in the tea plantations. So this is a very interesting dichotomy, like how a woman laborer was working on the tea plantations, because tea is often likened to woman, like not just as a commodity but even as a plant. Camellia is often compared to woman, and even when you notice a lot of tea ads and a lot of product pictures, you will see that often woman is picking the tea leaves. So yeah, that's a very important picture of the tea industry, that why is it that always women are shown to be the tea pickers, because this is how it is, because women are chiefly employed to pick the tea because they are uh, thought to be more gentle and more kind with the tea plant, so they have a very intimate connection with camellia plant. Similarly, the way in which British woman had a connection with the tea table and the in tea as a commodity itself. So this is a very interesting dichotomy. Yeah, I do want to delve into this as well a little more, but I think I'll wrap this topic up at this point. So yeah, this was a very brief story about the tea, and this video will go on for a little more, a little longer than usual. So please bear with me. Not very long, I guess 2 3 more minutes. So this was it. There's a lot more smaller details that I have not covered, but I will try to cover it if I see that people are interested in this topic. So I would like to delve into this topic because I have read a little bit more, and there are a lot of researchers who have stayed on the tea farms and lived with these tea laborers, women tea laborers, and done anthropological research. So that all of that is very interesting. I may talk about it if people want to know about it. So this was all. Uh, in these two sheets, I have tried to cover the story of the tea, and also I'm sorry for that. Also, I would recommend few readings. So I bought this book sometime back, which is known as tea garden literature. So tea garden literature has developed itself into a genre in its own genre. So this book actually consists of a lot of essays which talks about tea garden literature and what this genre means and what kind of literature is being written about the tea gardens. So this is a collection of essays, and this is compiled by Terence Mukhia, and it consists of a lot of essays by a lot of academicians and yeah, other people. So this is one very interesting book which I found, tea garden literature. And one more book of poetry is there by Kamal Kumar Tanti, the post-colonial poem. So Kamal Kumar Tanti is a poet from Assam, and he was born and brought up in a tea plantation. So yeah, and this collection consists of a lot of poetry which talks about the people of those communities, of those tribal communities who still live in those very impoverished conditions in the tea plantations in Assam. So yeah, these two books are something very interesting, are very interesting reads if you do want to get into the topic of tea. Likewise, there are a lot of more books which I'll discuss in one more video, which I'll be making in this topic, because I feel that there are a lot of other stuff that I do want to discuss, and I'll also bring my own paper which I wrote on this topic and some other readings which I found while I was doing the research on this topic. So yeah, this would be all for this video for now, and I'll be meeting you soon. So there you go. That's the story of the tea.